My name is Aubrey Hale, I'm 28 years old, and this Thanksgiving, I decided to stop being the family's wallet, even if it meant burning the table they were eating from. Stop begging for a car, my brother sneered across the candles. It's embarrassing. Everyone laughed. The kind of laugh that doesn't echo, it stings. Mom smirked, Dad cut the turkey a little too hard, and my aunt muttered, she's always asking for something. They thought I'd shrink, like always. I didn't. I smiled, slow and polite. You're right. Then, under the table, I opened my banking app and typed 6 quiet words that would flip the room upside down. Stop all payments on his credit cards. 2 seconds later, my brother's phone started buzzing. Once. Twice. Then non-stop. He frowned, checked the screen, and his face went pale. I sipped my wine. Everything okay, Kyle? What did you do? His voice cracked like glass. Everyone looked at me now, forks midair, eyes wide. Here's the truth they didn't know. For 3 years, I'd been paying off his debts. His car lease, his business trips, his designer suits, all funded by the little sister he mocked. Because Mom said, family helps family, Aubrey. You're stable, he's not. Stable. The word that sounds like praise until it becomes a cage. Kyle glared at me, still scrolling, still pretending his empire wasn't built on my paycheck. You can't just cut me off, he hissed. I leaned forward, smiled again, the kind of smile that ends wars or starts them. Oh, but I can. I own the card, remember? Aunt May dropped her fork. Dad finally stopped pretending not to see. The room was dead silent except for the endless buzz of Kyle's phone, his kingdom collapsing one notification at a time. Arden, Mom whispered, as if saying my name could undo it. I looked her in the eyes. You taught me to be generous, I said. You just forgot to teach me limits. The candlelight flickered, soft, golden, unforgiving. And in that flicker, I felt the first chill of freedom crawl down my spine. The buzzing didn't stop. It grew louder, like the universe wanted everyone to hear what was collapsing. Kyle's fingers trembled over his phone as notification after notification lit up the screen. Payment declined. Transaction blocked. Automatic transfer cancelled. He finally looked up, his fake confidence peeling away. What did you do, Aubrey? He whispered. I placed my napkin on the table, neat and deliberate. I stopped being your silent sponsor. Mom gasped. Aubrey, this isn't the place. I smiled thinly. No, Mom, it's exactly the place. You always said Thanksgiving was about giving back. I'm just taking back. Dad sighed like a man allergic to confrontation. Can we not make a scene? Kyle pushed back from the table, the chair scraping the floor like a scream. You're insane. I needed time. Time. I laughed quietly. 3 years wasn't time, Kyle. It was indulgence. The whole table went still. Even the clock on the wall seemed to hold its breath. Here's what they didn't know. Every bill he'd skipped, every overdraft he ignored, every temporary emergency he'd dumped on me, I had the receipts. All of it in a neat little folder titled Charity Case Number 1. You think this makes you better than me? He spat. No, I said softly, it makes me free. He blinked, not understanding that the quiet woman across the table wasn't the sister he used to manipulate. I wasn't scared anymore. I was finished. Mom stood up, hands shaking. You can't humiliate your brother like this. I didn't, I said. His lifestyle did. The words sliced through the air like clean ice. For the first time ever, Kyle didn't have a comeback. His mouth opened, then shut again, a fish on dry land. Dad tried to change the subject. Let's just eat. But the food had gone cold. The laughter, gone. The warmth, gone. Only silence remained, thick, electric, final. And in that silence, I knew, Thanksgiving would never taste the same again. After dinner, the storm followed us into the living room. The fire crackled, the only sound brave enough to exist between us. Kyle paced behind the couch, phone still in hand, his voice trembling between anger and disbelief. You ruined my life in front of everyone, he barked. I turned to face him, calm, steady. You mean I stopped financing it? His eyes flared. You think you're some kind of hero? You humiliated me, No, Kyle, I said softly. You did that the moment you decided your comfort mattered more than my peace. Mom stepped in, her tone a mix of guilt and desperation. Honey, maybe we can talk about this later. You've always helped him. Why stop now? I looked at her, really looked. The same woman who'd called me the strong one, the responsible one, like strength was a title you earned for quietly enduring disrespect. Because, I said, helping him didn't make him better. It made him entitled. Kyle scoffed, pacing faster. You think money gives you power? It doesn't, I said. But it exposes who thinks they deserve yours. He stopped cold, jaw tightening. For a second, I almost pitied him, almost. You've always been jealous, he snapped. You hate that I'm the favorite. The truth hit like deja vu. He wasn't wrong, not about the favoritism. About everything else, yes. But that wound, the old one, still pulsed under my ribs. I smiled faintly. You're right. I used to be jealous. Until I realized being the favorite just meant they kept forgiving your failures. Mom gasped. Dad rubbed his temple like the conversation was an inconvenience. Kyle clenched his fists. You'll regret this. I stood up, brushing invisible dust off my sleeves. I already did, for 3 years straight. Tonight, I'm just correcting the math. I grabbed my coat and purse. The room stayed frozen as I walked toward the door. Just before stepping out, I turned back and said quietly, by the way, the car I was begging for? I already bought it. The look on his face was worth every dollar I'd ever lost. The cold air outside felt cleaner than it had in years. It didn't just touch my skin, it unburdened it. I could still hear their voices echoing behind me through the walls. Mom's whispers of shame, Kyle's angry muttering, Dad's half-hearted attempts to restore control. The Hale family, perfect on Christmas cards, rotten in real life. I got into my new car, the one Kyle mocked me for, a deep navy sedan that hummed like it understood rebellion. As the engine started, I watched the lights of our family home flicker in the side mirror. It looked smaller than I remembered. But peace is strange. It doesn't arrive quietly, it arrives after the noise finally dies. My phone buzzed. A message from Kyle. Undo this, Aubrey. Please. I'll pay you back this time. I swear. A minute later, another one came from Mom. Family means forgiveness. You're being cruel. Cruel. That word landed like a blade. 4 years, I'd been the emotional medic patching every wound, forgiving every debt, covering every mistake. Now that I'd chosen silence instead of sacrifice, I was cruel. I locked the phone and whispered to myself, cruel is what happens when kind people finally close their hands. The next day, I woke up to 10 missed calls and 2 voicemails. Kyle's landlord, his car dealer, and even his gym membership had all come knocking, and my name had been on the paperwork for most of it. He hadn't been living off help. He'd been living off my identity. It wasn't just generosity anymore, it was theft wearing a family name. So I did what no one expected. I called my lawyer, the one who'd helped me set up my nonprofit, and asked, can you remove my name from every joint account and file for financial separation? There was silence on the line before he said, of course, Ms. Hale. Are you finally done being the responsible one? I smiled. No. I'm just done being the scapegoat. And as the papers were drafted, I realized, revenge didn't always roar. Sometimes, it simply signed. By Monday, my lawyer had everything ready, a full financial severance from my family. No shared credit lines. No joint accounts. No access. When he slid the final document across his desk, it felt heavier than paper should. Maybe because it wasn't just ink, it was years of expectation, guilt, and emotional servitude finally leaving my hands. I signed. And with that signature, I stopped being their backup plan. That evening, I got a call from Mom. Her voice was trembling, not with sadness, but accusation. Aubrey, she said, your brother's account is frozen. His car's being repossessed. They're saying your name was on it. Fix this. Please. I already did, I replied calmly. I fixed it by removing my name. Silence. Then the guilt trip I'd memorized since childhood. You're tearing this family apart. No, Mom, I whispered, I'm just stepping out of the ruins. She hung up. I sat there, in my apartment, quiet, warm, mine, and realized the peace I felt wasn't joy. It was justice. 2 days later, a letter arrived. My name, in Kyle's handwriting, crooked and desperate. You've made your point. I'll change. I promise. Just help me through this month. I read it 3 times. Same tone. Same manipulation. Same script. But there was something new in me now, a kind of strength that doesn't need witnesses. I didn't reply. Instead, I wrote one simple line on the back of his letter and mailed it back. Actions are due, not promises. Then, like the final scene of a movie I'd watched too many times, I folded it, sealed it, and walked away from the mailbox. That night, I slept, really slept, for the first time in years. No anxiety. No debt. No guilt masquerading as love. In the distance, a storm began to build. Not outside, inside the family group chat. And I knew when I woke up, the messages would be waiting like embers, demanding to be answered. But this time, I wouldn't flinch. Because for once, silence was my reply. Morning light crept across my apartment, quiet and soft, the kind that makes you forget what chaos feels like. For a few minutes, I thought maybe they'd stopped. Maybe the storm had passed. Then my phone lit up. 34 unread messages. The group chat was burning. Mom, do you realize what you've done to your brother? Dad, he can't pay rent now. People are calling us. Kyle, you're dead to me, Aubrey. You'll regret this. Then another, seconds later. Kyle, please. Just one transfer. I'll pay you back this time. The speed of his mood swings was almost poetic. I stared at the screen for a while, my reflection faintly visible between their words, calm eyes, steady breathing. The woman who used to panic, apologize, over-explain, she was gone. I typed a single reply and sent it to the group. Boundaries aren't betrayal. Then I put my phone face down and brewed coffee, slowly, intentionally. It felt almost ceremonial, like reclaiming control over 1,000 small things I'd once surrendered. But peace never lasts long when guilt is the family currency. That afternoon, Dad showed up at my office unannounced. Your mother's a wreck, he said quietly. You could have handled this privately. I looked at him, the man who'd stayed silent every time Kyle humiliated me, who'd said don't start drama whenever I cried at the dinner table. I did handle it privately, I said. For 3 years. He sighed. He's your brother. Yes, I replied, and I'm his lender. Or I was. Something in my voice startled even me, not anger, not pride. Just finality. Dad shook his head, muttering, you've changed. I had to, I said. Because staying the same kept everyone else comfortable but me. He didn't respond. Just walked away, shoulders heavy with disappointment. But as the door closed behind him, I smiled softly. Because for the first time, his disappointment didn't weigh anything at all. By the end of that week, silence had replaced the chaos, but it wasn't peace. It was the kind of silence families use as punishment. No calls, no visits, not even a passive-aggressive text. Just absence. And yet, I didn't miss them. I missed who I pretended they were. Then, one Friday afternoon, an email came through from the family's old financial advisor, a polite message meant to sound neutral, but it wasn't. Ms. Hale, your brother has requested to merge previous joint assets. He believes you gave verbal consent. My chest tightened. Verbal consent? That was his new trick, manipulating bureaucracy like he used to manipulate emotions. I replied instantly. Any such claim is false. Attach all documentation and block his access immediately. The advisor called me an hour later, voice low. He's already tried to use your name on 2 new accounts. We've locked everything, but he's desperate. Desperate. The word didn't sound like punishment anymore. It sounded like karma. That evening, I drove past our old neighborhood. The house still stood proud and hollow, same Christmas lights from last year, same cracked mailbox. Through the window, I saw them, Mom pacing with her phone, Dad on the couch, Kyle at the table with his head in his hands. For a second, my chest ached. Then the ache turned into clarity. I parked across the street, watching the flicker of the living room light, and whispered to myself. You didn't destroy them, Aubrey. You just stopped saving them from themselves. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was revelation. Before I left, I texted Kyle one last time. You wanted control. Now you have it. Every bill, every debt, every consequence. Good luck. He read it immediately. No reply. I drove away without looking back, the reflection of that house shrinking in my rearview mirror, smaller, dimmer, irrelevant. The silence followed me home, but this time it didn't hurt. It healed. A month passed. No calls. No texts. Just the faint echo of a family learning the value of silence. Then, one cold morning, I opened my mailbox and found an envelope. No name, just my address written in familiar handwriting. Kyle's. Inside was a check. $8,420.17. No note. No apology. Just repayment, the exact total I'd calculated from years of his temporary loans. For a long moment, I stood there on my doorstep, the winter air biting at my cheeks, the paper trembling between my fingers. Not because I wanted the money, but because, for once, he'd done something without me asking. I walked back inside, made tea, and stared at the check on the counter. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't redemption. It was acknowledgement, the currency he'd never learned to pay. Later that night, Mom called. Her voice was softer this time. His trying, Aubrey. His, different. I smiled faintly. So am I. She paused. Will you come home for Christmas? I looked around my apartment, my own lights, my own warmth, my own quiet. No, Mom, I said gently. Not this year. But tell him, thank you. When the call ended, I took the check, slipped it into an envelope, and wrote on it in silver ink. Use this to start over. Separate from me. Grow. Then I mailed it back. Not because he deserved grace, but because I did. That night, I stood by my window watching the city glow beneath falling snow. I thought about all the dinners where I'd sat invisible, all the times I'd paid for peace, all the times I mistook silence for love. This time, the silence was mine, owned, peaceful, and strong. I whispered to myself, freedom isn't revenge. It's release. The kettle clicked off. The room exhaled. And for the first time, I didn't feel like the forgotten one. I felt like the author of my own ending.